This is Why Small Business Matters from Northumbria University, supporting small businesses with the Help to Grow management programme.
So hello and welcome to Why Small Business Matters, the podcast that provides a platform for successful business leaders to tell their stories, offer advice and unravel what it means to be a successful SME. Today I'm joined by recruitment entrepreneur and group CEO Steve Rawlingson.
I didn't know what I was doing, but I just thought, I know I can make a bit of money here. And that business ended up having 40 people working for it, and it was making me a lot of money. And I was kind of like, Jesus, this is amazing.
Steve founded Samuel Knight, a specialist renewable energy and sustainable transportation recruitment business, in 2014 from a single-person office in Newcastle. Fast forward to 2023, and Samuel Knight employs over 100 consultants with offices throughout the UK, USA and Middle East. Steve's mission is to help build a greener and more environmentally friendly world by working with his global community to achieve zero carbon emissions by 2050. Having had success with his own businesses, Steve is now committed to helping those starting out with their own journeys. Steve, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sarah. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks.
That was some introduction, that mind.
Some introduction, I know. Today we're asking the question, and hopefully you can provide some insight on this. Are small business owners necessarily entrepreneurs?
Yes, I believe they are, yeah. At the end of the day, if you have taken that risk from stepping out of the world of being employed and either being self-employed or becoming an employee, then yeah, I definitely think that you've broken into the world of being an entrepreneur. It depends, doesn't it? Because how do you define an entrepreneur? Because I think I said this when we first started talking. For the first 5 years of Samuel Knight, I didn't even class myself as an entrepreneur. I just classed myself as somebody that, wanted to build my own company that I was proud to work for and other people would be proud to work for. I didn't sit and think, I'm the next Alan Sugar or anything like that.
So let's rewind 30 years. Tell me a little bit about your early days when you were at school. Did you ever envisage setting up a business like this?
Growing up at school, I was in the top sets for everything at school, but then when I got into high school, I got in with the wrong crowd and typical teenagers, started bunking off school, not really concentrating in class, and then I started fighting and I got expelled from 2 schools. And then at that point, I had to go and my parents split up, and I had to go and live with my granddad for a short time while my dad sorted a house out. And that's the name Samuel Knight is. Samuel is my granddad, and he's like my knight in shining armor. And at that moment of being close to my granddad, discipline and structure came into my life, and that's when things started to change for me. So he was a big part of my life, but at that stage I'd already kind of messed up my schooling. And where I grew up in Stoke-on-Trent, it wasn't really pushed on you to go to university. It was, I'm 40, I'm talking late 80s, early 90s. It was kind of pushed on you that if you finish school with 2 GCSEs, you've done an all right job, but you're going working in the pot banks, or you're becoming a bus driver, or you're going in the army, or working in like industrial. And that just wasn't me. I always knew, and this is really strange, in my gut and in my mind, even as a 14-year-old, I knew that this sounds arrogant, but I knew I was destined for something else. I knew I wasn't going to be in Stoke. I knew that my life was going to go on an adventure. And it just, something said, it's okay. I know I'm going to be somebody. I know that one day I'm going to build something. And that stayed with me from a 14-year-old. And my dad actually turns around to me and he says, "Son, it's really strange. When you got expelled from that second school, you used to say to me, 'It's okay, Dad, because I'm going to build a multi-million-pound company and I'm going to take care of everybody.'" And he was like, and now as a 68-year-old man, he sits there and he's like, what was it that you, like, what did you see at 14 to be able to say that to me? And I can't even answer it. I don't know the answer. Just something told me that I was destined for something more than just living in Stoke, being a bus driver and having a shit life. That just wasn't going to be me. I left home at 17. I left from living with my dad, and I got on a plane with no money on my pocket and moved to Ibiza. I saw an advert in the paper saying live and work in Ibiza, and I wanted to be a paratrooper, but my dad wouldn't sign me into the army. So what I thought was, right, I'll go to Ibiza, I'll do a year in Ibiza, and then I'll come back and I'll sign myself in the army, and then I'll become a paratrooper and go and live an amazing life, traveling the world, jumping out of airplanes. Sounded great. Again, nothing goes to plan because I moved to Ibiza, started earning good money, and I thought, actually, this is amazing. Set up a business where I was the first individual to see an opportunity with the nightclubs to, rather than people landing in the island and going to the nightclubs, I went to the nightclubs, bought these tickets in bulk, went on the streets of San Antonio and sold these tickets to people with a margin on it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just thought, I know I can make a bit of money here. And that business ended up having 40 people working for it, and it was making me a lot of money. And I was kind of like, Jesus, this is amazing. And then the kid's mom, who sadly passed away not so long ago, she fell pregnant with my son, and I thought, well, I can't just leave. I'd only been with the mother of my children for 4 months, and I thought, well, I can't leave her on her own. That's not a very good trait. So I came back to Newcastle and thought, right, well, I'll give it a go. So I passed on that business and got a little bit of money for it, moved back to Newcastle, and then at that point I went for an interview with a recruitment company to get a job with one of their clients, and the MD turned around and he said, oh, have you ever thought about doing your recruitment yourself? And I was only 22. I'd had no education. I hadn't even used a PC. In my school, they didn't have PC. I think they had about 3 PCs, but I was always bunking off, so I never got to go on them PCs. So I got into business, and there was this PC there, and I was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to work? Like, what is this? I'd obviously seen one, but I didn't know how work it. The last time I played on a PC was an Amstrad CP64, and it was playing on Batman, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you need to do an email. I'm thinking, what the hell? But I had a natural ability to talk to people because I am who I am. There's no fakeness with me. I don't try and pretend to be something I'm not. So when I start calling companies and I'm talking to them about engineering recruitment, and I'm just coming across like I am now, sincere. I didn't know much about the industry, so I did go to the library and start learning about machines and PLCs and robots and whatnot, and that helped me. But also interviewing candidates helped me and grew my mind. And within 12 months, I became one of the highest billers within this business. Within 8 years, I'd gone from a trainee recruiter up to a director of that business because I worked really, really, really hard. I had to. I had a baby boy who's now 19. He isn't a baby. But I had my son, who I knew that if I failed and I didn't keep this good job that was paying me a basic salary at the time of about 15 grand, I'm going to let my son down and I'm going to let my partner down. And then my daughter came along. And I was like, shit, now I really need to work. But so I did. I really, really worked. And then from that, I just grew and grew and grew. So that I'm not from Newcastle. It is my home. And I look at it as my home now. I've been here for nearly 20 years. Grew up in Stoke-on-Trent. Didn't really do much at school, but I knew I could have if I'd have just like put myself into it and just accelerated in education. But I just, typical teenager, just fell in with a bunch of idiots, and quite quickly before I started moving into adulthood, came out of that through my granddad Samuel, and just, created a strong work ethic for myself. And if I'm honest, for the last, I've been in the industry now for 20 years. I would probably say for them first 10 years, it was like a 10-year hard-working apprenticeship. I was the first in the office. I was last out the office, and I just grafted every single day. I would sit and watch people doing the basic minimum 9 till 5, and I would be in that office at 7 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't be leaving until 7 o'clock at night. And Saturdays I was grafting, Sundays I was reading. So I just worked really, really hard. That's what I did.
I think that's a really nice sum up of, entrepreneurship, really. It's that mindset, growth, risk and change, isn't it, that really brings it. Tell me about your product solutions, because they're fairly niche, aren't they? The industry that you work in. And I want to understand a little bit more about the importance of reputation in your industry and things.
Okay, so when I started Samuel Knight in 2014, the plan was, again, everyone can sit there now and look at Samuel Knight as this, this scaling, growing business with, as you say, offices all around the world, 35 million in sales. But that was never, my plan was never that wasn't like I came into the business. I started this business with, this is going to be huge. It was kind of like, right, I'm going to build a company that I want to work for. So when I set the business up, it purely specialized in renewable energy. And essentially what we do is we supply project engineering and construction solutions to some of the most innovative renewable energy projects around the world. That when you start that business, obviously people know that they know you as an individual because I've been in the industry for so long, but the reputation for the business wasn't essentially there. But I think I underestimated pretty much how my reputation was going to carry this business forward, because quite quickly the business within 2 years had done nearly 2.5 million in sales. So my mindset of, actually, this isn't going to be a small business. This could potentially be, a 20, 30 man business. And then year 2, it went from 2 million in sales to 10 million in sales. So as I'm scaling the sales function, I'm having to hire more people to support me with the growth of the business. And if I'm honest, for the first 2-3 years, it just came down to my reputation. But then the individuals that I'd hired, they were also getting their own reputation within the market sector. And then the business started getting an economy of scale. As marketing improved, everything kind of just improved through me just being open to the growth of the business and being supported by mentors. But essentially the business has never ever changed. So we're just really good at one thing, and that one thing is supplying recruitment and project solutions to renewable energy projects. It started in the EMEA region, and then in 2019, in the middle of the pandemic, we launched in the US, and that business now is nearly the same size as the UK business. And again, it's scaling and it's growing. So our functions that we operate across are engineering, construction, and technology, and that's working with utilities, developers, EPCs, operators, and construction companies that are essentially building either wind farms, solar farms, onshore and offshore, for the wind, solar farms, hydro, or battery storage. And it doesn't matter what gets thrown at us. The level of adversity from the top down is, if I'm calm, everybody else is calm, and you'll never see me not calm. If I'm honest, I just go with it.
We'll talk a little bit about leadership in a sec, but I just wondered, you talk about growing markets, but it's not always easy to enter new markets, is it? So tell me a little bit about how you managed to expand in the US and why you went there in the first place.
2019, just before the lockdown came in, I'd done a business trip over to Atlanta, and social media obviously played a big part. And I was launching in the US, and a client reached out to me and said, we didn't realize that Samuel Knight was operating in the US. And at that time, I've always been a great believer in saying yes and just taking a challenge. And I turned around and I said, oh yeah, we are in the US. We weren't, but I said we were. And he turned around and he said, oh great, we've got a business over there that's hiring significantly at the minute, and we're struggling to find somebody to partner with to hire senior vice presidents of construction. So I looked at it, I looked at the opportunities, and it's funny, the story was that about 6 months before, we'd raised institutional investment, and the investors turned around and said, listen, let's just build out the EMEA business and launch in the US when we're ready, and we'll do it the right way. I'm not one to be told what to do. The institutional investor only owns 15%. So I was like, okay, yeah. And at that time, I wasn't looking at the US. We were going over to Atlanta to have a conversation with a client that we were working with in a different part of the world. It was just that their head office was in Atlanta. Anyway, back to this client. So this client, that we've worked with for quite a few years turned around and said, look, we need these VPs of construction. And within 2 weeks of him actually giving us these roles, myself and the team had placed one of them that was a very senior based position. And the revenue attached to that was significant. And it took us 2 weeks to place that position. And the client had turned around and said, wow, however you've done this, it's completely different to how the US market usually runs. So they'd actually put this work out with another recruitment firm, and they were four months into their process, and it was still not placed. And then we come along as the new boys on the block, and we placed the position in 2 weeks. So the client gave us more work, and at that time, obviously, I had to go to my finance team and say, okay, guys, we're generating revenue in the USA. And I remember my FD and my CFO turning around and saying, we don't even have an entity in the USA. We don't even have a bank account in the USA. And I turned around and said, it's okay. I'll jump on a plane and head over to Chicago and we'll go and open one. So that's what I did. We just jumped on a plane, went to Chicago, opened up an office, opened up the entity, and had a lot of people around that we didn't really know how we were doing it, but we knew we would end up doing it. And you don't know what you don't know. So you just ask questions. And I just reached out to my network and was like, Luke, this is the situation. We're generating revenue in the US. Can you support us? Can you help us? And they were like, yeah, come and meet us when you're here. And that's what we did. And then within about 8 weeks, the business was set up. We had a bank account, and that was kind of like the start of it. And then it just started scaling, but not exponentially. It was scaling nice. There wasn't much risk attached to it because there was no associated costs with the work that we were doing. It was just basic recruitment for a client using our community and our network from around the world. In the middle of the lockdown, our UK business had started plateauing. It basically turned around, the government turned around and put everybody in lockdown, and it was quite difficult to get exemption from that lockdown. For all of his wrongs, Donald Trump had turned around and said, look, anybody who works in this market, you can carry on working. And the client we were working with had quite a few wind farms that needed some project solutions. So we took that work on, and I think within 7 months of trading in the USA, we generated $10.4 million worth of revenue. And that was all through COVID. So while we knew that COVID was going to play a big part in it, it was going to potentially hurt the business. Again, I kept calm. I didn't sit and say, we're in trouble here or anything. That's just not my mindset. I said, whatever happens, we'll get through it, and we'll safeguard everybody's jobs. And the actual plan wasn't to scale and grow in that middle of that lockdown. It was just to, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Everything will be fine. And if we can grow, great. But if we don't, it's not the end of the world. And by the end of the year, I think we'd grown by nearly 48%, and opened up a brand new business. And that was essentially how we got into the US, if I'm honest. It was taking that risk. Again, entrepreneurs, they're not scared of anything, are they? I get people turn around to me and say, does anything scare you? And I'm like, not really, no, because I did a podcast a few weeks back, and my mindset is that, look, everything, it doesn't matter how hard it feels like when you're in a storm. You've got two different kinds of mindsets, haven't you? You either run away from it as quick as you can, as I said, or you run towards it and you get through it as quick as you can. And everything is usually okay anyway. Whatever you feel you're going through at that point, as an entrepreneur, your job is to get through them storms and keep everybody calm as a leader. And if I'm doing that and the leadership team are underneath me doing the same thing, then everything is going to be okay. And that's essentially how we ended up breaking the US. And now, like I say, it's nearly this. Well, it's going to be the same size by the end of this year. It'll be the same size, same revenue streams as the UK business that's been going for nearly 10 years. I
love that calm mindset, that attitude that let's just do it. Let's try it. See how it goes. Take the opportunity.
Well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, does it? You're not. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still winning anyway. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work. It doesn't matter if, it fails. At least you can say that you tried it. And, at the end of the day, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
I want to talk a little bit about your mission. You said you had a clear vision for a business that you wanted to work in. And I think you've stated that your mission is to build a greener, more environmentally friendly world by working with the global community. Global emissions, sustainability, buzzwords of the moment. How much does sustainable development goals impact on your business?
We KPRI business. The KPIs that we run through the business are not based on typical revenue streams or how many staff we're employing. We KPI the business on how many megawatts of renewable energy we're generating or we've been involved in. So if each year we want to grow that by at least 20 to 30%. For every pound that we make within the business, we plant a tree. We've partnered with so many different charities and so many different organizations that, we don't just want to be one of these businesses that is offering our services to the industry and not doing anything else, because there's much more that we could do as a business. So partnering with companies that are heavily involved in making an impact in the environment and working towards zero carbon emissions, that falls directly in line with our values. And as I say, for every pound we make, we plant a tree, and we KPI the business on megawatts. We're actually into gigawatts now, so we're past the point of measuring the business on megawatts. We're actually into, I think last year we were responsible, Samuel Knight as a whole were responsible for operating and constructing nearly 4.7 gigawatts of renewable power. And this year we want to try and grow that by at least 20%. When we looked into and analysed the business by half year, we were on par to reach 5 gigawatts. So it's growing every single year. We're basing our growth on what impact we're having on the environment and what impact we're having to reach that zero carbon emissions. So yeah, it's a big part for the business.
You've talked a lot about growth of your business, but I'm also interested to understand your own growth as a leader. And I think you've already taken some steps in your own self-development, haven't you? Can you tell me about some of the programs that you've been on recently and how you're really, pursuing that goal to develop yourself?
Yeah, of course. I've never stopped self-developing. From the moment I got into business, I was quite lucky with the company I worked for. They invested quite heavily in myself and my career, and that never stopped. And then same again when I went to work for the entrepreneur, invested heavily in me, and I invested heavily in myself to self-develop. No formal qualifications at that stage, but just like general courses within business and general leadership training and whatnot. Then I went for work for the big corporate again. A lot of self-development there, not so much investment as me as an individual. But then about 2 years ago, I knew the business was at a point where I needed to grow my mindset, because again, if you haven't done it and you don't know what you don't know. So, it probably started in 2018. I knew I needed to refinance the business and raise some equity because I'd been funding the business myself. But how do you do that if you don't know how to do it? So I bought loads of books from Harvard in terms of understanding different finance, different levels of investment, and how to understand finance and how to understand P&L, profit and loss accounts and balance sheets, and worked closely with my finance team. And they couldn't get their head around why I wanted to know this, because it's kind of like, look, you don't have to know this because you employ us to do this. And it was kind of like, I didn't really want to show my card of I'm going to go for raise investment. So for about 6 months, I just learned everything I could about raising institutional investment. I read a great book called What Harvard Doesn't Teach You. And I just studied the finance element of everything to do with business. And humans have a real good eye for copying and mirroring when when you become a chameleon or whatever, and you just end up following that trait. And that's essentially what happened. So yeah, I'm never going to stop learning, because I think at that moment that you stop learning, you become complacent, and complacency isn't going to get you anywhere. If anything, you're going to end up going backwards. So just keep growing, keep going.
I think it's about giving people those opportunities, isn't it? And I think at the moment, with issues around recruitment and retention, and getting people back in the office, actually, that's a really good incentive, having a gym and an instructor actually on hand.
Definitely, I agree.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. Find out how Northumbria University can help your business thrive through the Help to Grow management programme. Delivered by leading small business and enterprise experts from Northumbria University, with the support of leading figures from industry and experienced entrepreneurs. The programme supports senior managers of small and medium-sized businesses to boost their business's performance, resilience and long-term growth. The 12-week programme is 90% funded by the government, and the fee payable by participants is £750 and has been designed to allow participants to complete it alongside full-time work. The in-depth, high-quality curriculum supports you to build your capabilities in leadership, innovation, digital adoption, employee engagement, marketing, responsible business and financial management. By the end of the program, you'll develop a business growth plan to help you lead your business to realize its potential. To find out more about the program, the modules, eligibility and fees and delivery dates, go to northumbria.ac.uk/help-to-grow.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. I'm Sarah Stephenson, and today I'm talking to CEO Steve Rawlingson of Samuel Knight. I want to talk a little bit about, the stuff you do outside of work. So I know you're a busy man, you're a single parent to 2 children, but you're also involved in charity and philanthropy, and I think that's something I'd like to talk to you about and really find out a bit more about.
Okay, so I've been involved in the CEO Sleep Out, which is run by Bianca Robinson. And again, the charities that we choose have to be in line with the values of Samuel Knight. And we are, again, we're passionate about giving back to the local community. So every Christmas, the charities that we run is every Christmas we choose in the Newcastle region. We choose a charity of choice to raise money for the children, to make sure that they've got presents at Christmas time. So we support local care homes last year. This year, I believe we have chosen Feed the Families. And we do a lot of work around the Christmas time where we try and raise as much money as we possibly can through different events, to give back to everybody, basically kids and families that are less fortunate. So that's the first one. Second one, I've been involved in the CEO Sleep Out with Bianca Robinson, as I was saying, and I'm coming up to my 10th CEO Sleep Out. That charity does some unbelievable work for the local region in terms of the money that's raised. You can actually see where that money goes to people who, again, are less fortunate and maybe have fell on hard times and they're without a home. And I'm a great believer in no one in today's world should be without a home or without a bed or without a warm meal. So on average, most years, just throughout the Newcastle region, I believe Bianca raises north of £60,000 for one night. But as a whole, that charity is raising, I would say, close to $500,000 a year now. And you can see where that money goes. It goes back into the local communities throughout Northeast, Northwest, Midlands, Southeast, Southwest. She does it all over the UK. Fantastic charity. And this year I was honoured to be made an ambassador of the CEO Sleep Out. So becoming a spokesperson for that charity. I'm an ambassador for the Prince's Trust, and I have been since 2017. So that's working with, again, children and teenagers that maybe are involved in gangs or crime, and just trying to say, look, that you've got 2 choices in life. You can either go down that route that you're going, and there's only one way you're going to end up there, or you can channel all of the adversity that's happened to you throughout your life, and you can channel that in a different way and have more of a positive life. And we work with them and help them with like what apprenticeships are coming up, and kind of structure like a path for them to, if you do this while you're at school and knuckle down, the chances are you'll be able to get onto an apprenticeship scheme with Siemens Energy, Network Rail, National Grid, whoever's doing apprenticeships. And that gives you a clear path to, having a career. And when you've got a career, it gives you opportunities, it just because, again, I don't want to sound like I can just take adversity, but, adversity in my mind, you can either sit there and just take it and get beaten up, or you can channel it in different ways and really push yourself forward. And some of these teenagers, they've had it rough, but when they've got someone there who's saying, look, I know how you feel. I grew up in one of the, roughest areas in the Midlands, and, I've never been arrested. I haven't been in prison, and, and I'm trying to educate them on saying, look, there's a different path that you can take here. And then many other charities as well. I always see charities popping up in the office for someone doing the Great North Run, or they're doing a bake-off or anything for local charities. And I think, again, it starts at the top, doesn't it? And if everybody at senior management in Samuel Knight is a big believer in giving back, then everybody underneath them, if we hire the right people based on values, have the same values as me, has the same values as the senior management, and they want to give back to the local community. So we're always going to be like that. And would I be where I am today if them people hadn't have supported me and helped me? Probably not. No. So it's kind of like pass the baton on, isn't it? If someone did it for me, then, do it back.
You talked previously about when you had a mentor, when you were really understanding about what business was.
Yeah.
Do you do any mentoring yourself at the moment within business?
I do. I'm currently mentoring five CEOs, entrepreneurs of businesses of all shapes and sizes. So I'm mentoring an amazing lady who set up a healthcare company. That business is scaling and growing nicely. Mentoring a waste management lady who has just gone through an exit through some of the mentoring that I've been giving her. I've been a mentor for a Black community social media platform that aspirations are to get 1 million Black graduates into full-time education. And that business, when I first started mentoring, was a one-man band, and it now employs north of 50 people. I'm also mentoring someone who has a clothing company, and I'm mentoring someone who has a tech company. So all different shapes and sizes. But the mentors that I work with now, I still want to keep that element of risk. This is what I say to him. I want to understand how I get from A to B with this level of financial control, and what am I going to need to get to that next stage. And then I obviously get mentored around growing and developing a bigger management team, because if we're going to take over the world in terms of renewable energy staffing, then I need to keep growing individuals and leaders within the organization, because to grow the business, you've got to grow leaders. So yeah, it's just a different kind of mentoring now. Obviously, self-developing, you learn a lot from self-developing. I've learned a lot from the MBA. I'm learning a lot from my masters. So you can't just expect other people to reach out and help you. You've got to be able to help yourself as well. But I think mentoring has played a big part in my life. And if I can add something back to a business owner or an entrepreneur or someone who's thinking about starting a business, there's definitely things that I can support them and help them with in terms of what that looks like and how to get from this starting point to this point. And yeah, I think it's good that I can do that.
I love that generosity of, it's almost like a feedback loop, isn't it? Mentoring, particularly in the region. I think that's really great that you can be there as a sounding board for other people, but actually you're still reaching out to your informal network who provide that really important confidence, I suppose, isn't it? When you're looking perhaps to move forward. The business is nearly 10 years old, Steve. What are your next steps? Are you planning on an exit? What are you lining up for the future?
The answer is yes, obviously, because the one thing that I always said was, at the point of me not adding benefit to Samuel Knight is the point that I need to step aside and move into more of a chairman role and look for that next leader of the business. We've just hired a COO. who has 25 years industry experience. He joins the business on the 6th of November. He's worked in some of the best, well, one of the biggest recruitment companies over the last decade, and he was a key figure in growing that business to 250 million in sales. So the answer is yes. Obviously, there is going to get a point where I'm not the person to lead the business, but right now I am that person. I still am the person to lead the business. So what's next is to carry on scaling out the US operations. Obviously, North America is such, it's so different in size from the UK. Again, it's like comparing night and day, and there's some big challenges over there over the next 2 to 5 years. I would say just on the onshore side, there's about 80 gigawatts of pre-construction power, and then on the offshore side, there's probably another 60 gigawatts of pre-construction power. So that ultimately has challenges around project manpower solutions and hiring, and that's where we come in to partner with our clients. Again, as I was saying before, when you're growing or you think about developing or growing a certain project, there's three things that you always think about. And it's number one, have we got the manpower and the resources to deliver to this project? Number two, can we actually fund it and finance it? And number three, can we control the risk element around that project? And that's where we partner with our clients to support them, one, on the manpower resources and the recruitment element, and then around that risk appetite, the risk element around that project is we insure, and we insure every bit of work that we go on. We insure it through our own insurances, so it gives them confidence. There's just so much work in North America. So next on the line, keep growing out Dallas, scale out Boston, which is where the offshore wind work is going to be, and that's due to probably start scaling very quickly at the end of Q1 next year. And it probably, in fact, not probably, it will be a significant revenue stream for Samuel Knight USA for probably the next 5 years. And then we'll probably go and look to scale out and grow our new location in California. We're not too sure on that one yet. And then in the EMEA business, that business is, as you say, it's nearly 10 years old now. It's getting good economy of scale. It's hiring good people, training them, retaining them, and scaling that side of the business. And then ultimately, I'm sure the senior management team will probably want to look to open up a location in the APAC region. So we're 10 years old, but if I'm honest, it feels like we're just 1 or 2 years old, and we've got every year. It's just a different number that you're kind of negotiating with, because obviously as senior management or as shareholders of the business, we're not a charity at the end of the day. We're in business to build a great company. That my aspirations are to build one of the best companies to work for in the world. And that is profitable. So we can keep investing in a staff, we can keep investing in emerging market sectors, and ultimately become a dominant force in our market sector. So there's lots and lots of big plans right now. And to answer your question, an exit, I think at the minute that's probably the last thing on my mind, but it will happen eventually when the business becomes a beast, and it just needs someone to operate it and not build it.
So a bit too early for the moment. I'm intrigued. I mean, I'm blown away by the scale of what's happening, but I just wondered whether, us in the UK and the messaging from government currently about, perhaps drawing back from the plans to go as fast as many of us would hope. But it seems as though things are full steam ahead in the US in terms of implementation, construction for new energy markets. How does that sit with you? I mean, do you see that in the UK? Are things slowing down, or are projects still going ahead?
That's a good question. Look, the government have their own view on using fossil fuels or renewable energy resources. Projects haven't slowed down yet. There is a lot of there's funds that have been pulled from some of the sustainable transportation projects. I saw the last week that they've pulled the funding on the HS2, and then a few weeks before that, I saw that they were looking at releasing some oil and gas licenses to start exploration again. There'll be a reason why the government have said that. It's really easy to just keep doing what you're doing, isn't it? Why change something if it isn't broken, is their mind, because they don't feel like they can see climate change or climate damage. And you have all these people on the internet and scaremongering saying, no, it's not, there's no climate change, there's no climate damage or anything. Well, there is. It's fact. It is happening. And it's just because you can't see it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not happening. And in 100 years' time, if we don't make a change, then obviously they're going to see the damage that it's caused. Probably not the individuals that are running the country now, but definitely their children's children will see the damage that we've caused. And that's what sits in the back of my mind. But yeah, in America it is full steam ahead, and they're big believers in becoming carbon neutral by 2030. Obviously our government just, as I say, now and again they'll just swap the minds. It is what it is.
We'll move on to lighter ground, maybe.
Yeah. I might end up offending people.
We've talked a lot about the mindset of entrepreneurs, and particularly, your own. And you've started your own podcast as well. So I'd like to really understand what you're trying to explore, because, tell us a little bit about it. I believe it's called Unlock Your Mindset.
So it's called Unlock Your Mindset. And part of my findings through my master's is that entrepreneurs and successful people have an element of each one of the quadrants. So IQ, SQ, AQ, and EQ. And what's really interesting over the last 2 months of interviewing some of the region's most successful entrepreneurs, and the next series is going to go over to I'm going to take it global and start interviewing some people from the US. What's really interesting is that every single entrepreneur or successful individual that I've interviewed has a really, really high level of EQ and a really, really high level of AQ. So that ability to deal with adversity and that ability to understand people and to get the best out of people. And they're the people that can make a difference to the world. They're the people that tend to go out there and take risks. Because if I'd had I can hand on heart say that this is the exact same with me. I know that I have a really high level of emotional intelligence. Whatever gets thrown at me, I'm still smiling. I'm still happy, because as I always say, I'm on the winning side anyway. I broke my hand on Sunday by falling over, and on Monday I'm still in the gym. I'm still climbing my mountain. I'm still pushing forward, and I'm still smiling. And I think that ability to deal with adversity, and that is one of the traits that I've seen quite clearly through my series 1 of Unlock Your Mindset, is that people, the individuals that I'm talking about, are the game changers that can just deal with whatever gets thrown at them, because they get it. They just get it. Business is hard. Life is hard. If you've got a really high level of IQ, and I can say this because my CFO is one of the most intelligent people, one of the most intelligent men I've ever met, and he's got a really, really high level of IQ, but a below average level of EQ. He just doesn't get people. He says things. He doesn't mean to say things to offend people. It's just the way that his DNA works. Because he's so intelligent, he analyzes every single risk before he takes a jump. Whereas my level of IQ is probably just normal, if I'm honest. And so I don't overanalyze anything. If I see an opportunity, I don't think with my brain, I think with my gut, and I go with what I feel feels right. And if it feels right to me, I go for it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm not bothered. I'm not analysing it and go, if I do this and that doesn't work, I'm going to lose my house. I took a big risk with setting Samuel Knight up, and I'd walked away from a job that was paying me 6 figures in salary as a 28-year-old man, with share options and a nice company car. I was set. And people who I said I'm leaving to go and set up Samuel Knight, they couldn't believe what I was doing. They were like, you're the youngest managing director in this £3.5 billion company. You're on this amount of money. You've got these share options. They literally the ground you walk on, you can't do any wrong. You're going to grow. By 65, you'll have an amazing pension. That's not me. I didn't want that. It wasn't getting challenged. And I thought, this isn't me. So I walked away. I didn't analyze anything. I walked away. I didn't pay myself a salary for 2 years, and I grew a great company. So my podcast is all about giving back to people who will listen to it around the adversity of being able to deal with things. Is that you? The emotional intelligence. Do you understand people, and can you get the best out of people? Because no business can grow when it's on your own. Fact. So you have to be able to empathize, sympathize, be sympathetic, and drive and push people forward, because that's what an entrepreneur is. If you're thinking about starting up a business, then it doesn't matter if it's a small business or a medium-sized business or a large-sized business. If you can't get people to come on that journey with you, because that's your job, you have to inspire people to want to create that fellowship, to come with you on this journey that you want to go on. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to get very far. The social element is being able to, I think it's really important. Do you have a best friend? And if you don't have a best friend, you have to think, why don't I have a best friend? So that social element is, have I developed and grown relationships throughout my life that are still there, and they're based on mutual respect, support, and care and love? And then on the flip side of that, you can look at it in a business point of view and go, can I create a long-term relationships with my client, with my clients, with my community, that I know they're going to want to work with me for 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Because if you haven't, then that's something else that's really difficult you can't teach that. You've got to have these things. And then finally is the IQ. I'm not saying that individuals, most entrepreneurs or CEOs don't have a high level of IQ, because they do. I know I'm not below average, and I know I'm not above average, but I know my IQ is of good stance. I'd consider myself an intelligent guy, and the university would, because obviously I'm on par for a distinction now. So I know I'm not thick, but I also know what I'm really, really good at, and my EQ and AQ is off the scale, and everybody I've interviewed is exactly the same. So my podcast is about giving back. People can listen and understand what mindset you need to have to be successful. And the opening line is, if you focus on shit grows. If you focus on positivity, then everything else in your life will be positive. And you've got two choices. As humans, we're in control of our emotions. Do you want to go down that route of saying today's going to be a really, really bad day? Because I bet my bottom dollar, if you say that the moment you wake up, you're having a bad day. Or do you want to wake up, brush off yesterday, and go, today's going to be an absolute awesome day, and I'm going for it. No matter what gets thrown at me today, I'm having it off. I'm going for it. And that's the shit that makes a difference. That's what makes a difference. That's where my podcast is.
So I think we've answered our question then, haven't we? Are small business owners entrepreneurs?
I'm quite passionate about the mindset, because I read so many books and so many, and I do, obviously, I'm quite spiritual, as I said before, and and I focus on my manifestations and my affirmations, and I'm grateful and I'm humbled, and I'm so down to earth, and my feet's on the ground with where I am and who I am as an individual today. But I know that it's my mindset that helps me to push forward and to break through barriers that maybe some people would just struggle with. You can look at it. It doesn't matter if it's raining. There's a sun there somewhere. So that's how I look at things. Well,
I think that's a really good note to leave on there, Steve. Thank you very much indeed. Positivity, and There's some sunshine out there somewhere. I like that.
Exactly.
Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks to my guest, Steve Rawlingson of Samuel Knight. If you've enjoyed today's episode of Why Small Business Matters, find us on your podcast app of choice and explore some of our previous episodes. And don't forget to hit subscribe. This episode is brought to you by the Help to Grow Management team at Northumbria University. If you'd like to find out more how Help to Grow Management can grow your business, please go to northumbria.ac.uk/help to grow.